Good day to those who are watching. We appreciate all of you for tuning in to our news channel. Within our broadcast today, we will be going over the subject of addiction and whether it is a moral defect or a disease. And now to Thalia for an up-close and personal interview on the field.
Hi, I'm Talia and I'm here at IRSC. And what is your name?
Antonio Hernandez.
Hello. So we're here just to interview people and we're wondering, do you consider addiction a mental illness or a disease?
More of a mental illness.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
I did law enforcement for 16 years. It's either you're have addicted personality or you don't. Most people can, like anything else, take a Tylenol and be okay. There's other people see pain pills as something to go ahead and get a euphoria off of it. Once they get the euphoria off of it, they want to chase that initial first high, which they never do. By taking more, they try to achieve it. So it is more of a mental issue than it is a disease, because you can stop it anytime you want. A lot of people go through a lot of stuff, selling people's family heirlooms and whatnot, but it does not mean it is a disease. A disease is like a cancer or something that's like you don't have a control over it. This you do. You can stop. You can stop doing these things. People say it's hard to stop. I've seen it. People do it. Me, as personal experience, I have an addicted personality. I know if I drink alcohol, it goes to a certain level, and I don't know how to stop. I stopped drinking altogether. I chose that. You have to choose it. If you don't choose it, you keep on abusing and using it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
And we're all set here.
And now let's hand it over to Sophia for an interview with an expert in the field. This interview is going to be about addiction. But I will start off with what is your name and your job?
So it's Darcy Fleural, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker in private practice, and I'm also a CAP, which is a certified addictions professional.
Wonderful. So in your work with addiction, you have worked closely with addicts?
Actually, I've done mainly private practice addiction and I've done prevention. So I haven't worked in a treatment center, but rather I did more the front end, which is prevention and doing community organizing.
Yeah. In your interactions with people with addictions or families and things of that matter, have you had any experiences in that field of work that have maybe altered your opinions that you might have had before on addiction?
That's a great question. Yes, actually. So when I first started working with addiction, I was very much came from an abstinence framework. And after working with folks in addiction in my private practice and really spending time and getting more like intimate knowledge of their experience and their struggle with addiction, I've moved to more of what's called a harm reduction model. Are you familiar with that, with harm
Yes,
reduction?
I am.
Yeah, so I've moved to more of a harm reduction perspective.
Okay, I see. So in harm reduction, I'm aware of what that is, but would you mind elaborating on what that is and the role that it plays in recovery?
Sure. So if I was to just kind of summarize what it is, in abstinence, it's the framework is if you're an addict, you can never use anything. You need to be completely clean. And if you're not completely clean, you're not sober. And with harm reduction, it's more trying to see if the person can moderate their substance, can they put some rules and regulations around their use, and can they step down in their use. So for example, if I work with alcoholics and they drink vodka every night, and when they're drinking they get hammered on vodka, and then they go out and they get a DUI and they get arrested and they get in bar fights, causing all kinds of problems. But they can't stop drinking, but they want to stop drinking. So at that point, we might recommend like, well, why don't you let's try drinking beer, something with lower alcohol content, and see if you still have the same negative impact. When people think of harm reduction, they often think of heroin and Suboxone, but it can be it can be, I think, utilized in a lot of different ways.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Do you have any, maybe a story or anything you would be able to share where you have maybe seen things within your field of work, um, maybe a certain experience where you saw a really bad addiction that might have solidified the way that you feel about addiction or your opinions on it?
Gosh, that is a tricky question off the cuff. One client comes to mind, but it's not just like clear addiction, and that's the thing about addiction, right? So
Yes.
there's often, sometimes you have people that um become addicted to a substance, but often there's a root cause for the addiction.
Mhm.
And um, my overall theory, and let me see if this answers your question. I believe that there's use and abuse and addiction. And so some people use substances. Some people can use substances recreationally, no big deal. Then there's those times where maybe someone who just uses things on occasion, they go through a difficult time and now they're abusing it. So let's say, um, somebody who drinks wine on occasion, but then gets divorced. Next thing you know, they're drinking wine every night, a bottle, right? And so now they're abusing the alcohol.
Mhm.
Then, if bad things start happening while they're abusing that substance and they don't stop, even when these harmful consequences, then that moves into addiction. That's kind of how we define it is if the person continues to have problems and they continue to use, they're moving into addiction. My theory and framework is kind of rooted in the fact that addiction is really rooted in a need for connection. And and so when a person has attachment wounds or is disconnected, right, it can create all kinds of issues beyond addiction. It can create mental health issues, and attachment style wounds. So with with that, gosh, it's kind of a complicated question, really, because I'm trying to get back to the story.
I understand this. I understand.
So, one particular client that I think about is somebody who it's hard to know, is the addiction triggering the mental health issues? Is the mental health issues triggering the addiction? Because she has what's called comorbidity.
Okay.
So, with comorbidity, that is when a person has more than one issue going on. So with her, she had depression, bipolar disorder, and maybe, I would say I probably add some PTSD to that.
Mhm.
And but she was able to be pretty successful in life. She was able to get an education. She was able to maintain a marriage, and have relationships. She struggled. But what would happen is, when she would drink, it's as though those mental health issues just like came on full force.
Mhm.
And the drinking, that is when the self-mutilation would happen, suicidal ideation. I mean, it would just consume her, the depression.
Mhm.
But the drinking would be driven by a loneliness and a lack of attachment, a lack of being understood, a lack of connection. So I think it kind of goes, so my theory and is kind of going back to that. She really, I guess, helped me understand how important having the right support system, the right relationships, can help with sobriety, I guess.
Mhm. So with that, experiencing that and knowing that person and what they went through, um, seeing the way that one addiction or their main addiction, which was alcohol, the way that it impacted, or I guess the way that it brought forward their mental illnesses more, yet they still, when they, weren't drinking, they were able to lead a normal life and have a family and everything. Did that in a way show you, um, kind of that addiction really sometimes isn't a choice.
I don't think it's a necessarily a conscious choice. Like to
Mm-hmm.
choose to drink is the
Mm-hmm.
maybe the choice.
Mm-hmm.
I do will say with this particular person, I think that she's more appropriate for abstinence than harm reduction.
Okay, okay. Just like full
So
stop.
yeah, I don't know that everybody can do harm reduction. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
good for some people, but not all people.
Mm-hmm.
So as I've been in private practice now just 10 years, and um with I get as you're in this field, you get introduced to new different theoretical frameworks for working with people. And one of the frameworks that I've been introduced to recently is called um IFS, internal family systems, or also called ego state therapy, is another kind of branch of that. And essentially in that work, it says that we all have parts. Not that we all have like multiple personality disorder, but that we all have parts or aspects of the self. And these parts sometimes are integrated and play well together. But if we have trauma and unresolved trauma and wounds, sometimes these maladaptive parts are kind of steering the ship, if you will. And so sometimes I think those parts are responsible for a lot of people's addictive choices or behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some way, like, yes, it could be looked at like a choice, but until they understand that part and what that part and begin to work with that part in a more compassionate and loving way,
Mm-hmm.
then they're kind of like they're kind of giving up their power to this maladaptive part. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense? So I
I
just
think
don't
so.
know
Yeah.
what right
Yeah.
there, but um I have, for example, I have another client that I'm working with, and I have found this. I've worked with a lot of people who are parents of addicts,
Mm.
and helping them learn to cope, have boundaries, navigate, um, how to take care of themselves while loving their usually adult children with addiction. And I have this particular client that comes to mind where their child adult male is, in his 50s. And again, it's alcohol. You would think you would hear more about prescriptions and things like that, but that he keeps going in and out of treatment. He's had so much treatment. He'll be sober for 4 months and then he'll relapse and then he's back again. And um, what's driving that? Like he clearly wants to be sober. He is not giving up. He's
Mhm.
trying again, trying again. So, I mean, is it a choice when he drinks? Yeah, it's a choice. It's so tricky.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of my whole overall discussion is whether you believe that addiction in general is a choice or if it is a disease or if it is a sort of moral defect or if it is a disease, something that people can't help.
I
Yeah, and
think
so I think
both.
that definitely, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's both depending on the person and their
Mhm.
story. None of us
Yeah.
are the same, but yet we have this common humanity. And some folks aren't wired correctly. I don't want to say correctly, but wired typically that they're able to have that kind of decision making, that they might not have be wired to resist the urges.
Mhm.
So in that sense, it would be a disease, right?
Yes.
But I think that a lot of addiction is rooted in that just the attachment style of not feeling heard and seen and understood.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
And the more secure people are, the less likely, when I say secure, like secure and safe in this world, the
Hmm.
less likely they will become an addict.
Yeah. So it's really not black and white. It's like everything in your life all like coming together, your experiences and like you talked about before, like the different parts of you, like all of those things are affected throughout your life, and that affects, whether you obtain an addiction or, you know, all of those things. And so that kind of makes it so there's really, whether addiction is a choice or a disease, it's so much more than that kind of. It's like, it's really not, it can't be that black and white.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it can't be that black and white, and it's so individualized. And
Mm-hmm.
then, like, you're going to take addiction, like we're talking about substances, but addiction can be translated into food, exercise, um, technology, all sex,
Mm-hmm.
gambling, all of that, right?
Anything. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
mhm. And really, if you kind of like back it up, back it up, back it up, it all comes back to like connection. And is
Mm-hmm.
that individual connecting in the world in a healthy way?
Okay. Yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was wonderful. I appreciated all of your insight a lot. Thank you.
You did a great job.
Thank you so much, Darcy. I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye. We want to thank you all for coming along with us on this journey through understanding addiction further, and whether it is a choice or a disease, a moral defect or a medical condition. Thank you all and have a wonderful evening.